Welcome to Three Voices Unfiltered, where no topic is off limits and everything gets real. Join us,
Ronisha,
Theresa,
Suzanne, as we dive into hot topics, share our wildest experiences, and bear our honest opinions and thoughts. Buckle up, because with us it's always raw, always vibrant, and absolutely unfiltered. Welcome back to part 2 of last week's episode as we continue celebrating Black History Month with our special guest, Miss Maynard.
You had hard knocks. You had to go through some things, and you had to suffer the indignities of not being able to go through the front door.
How about how did it affect you? This is then one of our questions, but as I hear you talking, it makes me think of, because the times back then, I mean, they're not even fantastic now in 2025. So back then, when tragedies happened, and they were plastered all over the news, or when somebody got killed, or how did that affect your community though? Did it increase fear? Did it kind of that's them, or how I know that it impacted, but
Those were the times that the races came together.
Okay.
If someone was hurt or killed in the community, my mom would fix you a pot or something. If someone in the black family was hurt, everyone would come together. This was rural living.
Okay.
It wasn't that way, I won't say it wasn't, because I don't know, because I'm a farmer's daughter.
Yes.
I grew up rural and I enjoyed it. The whole community had to depend on each other to get by. It's just like we were talking earlier about when we would go somewhere together, but you didn't have to separate until you got there. When you got there, they go in the front and I had to go to the back.
I got you.
I won't go through the back door now unless everybody else is going.
That's right. That's right.
But then I knew that's what was expected of me. That's how I would stay out of trouble and get back home to mom and dad.
Okay.
And so that was it. But when there were tragedies, because the story that I told you all about when my little brother went to school at the white school, the next year he came down with a bone cancer. Some of those same people that was in that ditch helped take up the money and have the fundraiser for every time that he had to go all the way to Chapel Hill to get treatment.
Wow.
Every time that he had to go, there was gas for the car. If there was a flat tire, it was fixed.
That's awesome.
And there was always money for food. They didn't miss, and they had, and they would send him big boxes of letters from the school, because he was in 10th grade. But they would send all that to him, and they made work for my mama and my daddy to do. So they were living on a person's farm, and that worked. But they made sure there was something for them to do. They didn't have to beg anybody for anything. My parents got the assistance from welfare and everything at my insistence, because I told them I pay enough taxes as a single woman to take care of anything you all would get. And they were getting old, and one had a lung disease, and my mama did too, because she had asthma, but daddy had he had a piece of corn stalk, because he was a farmer. Like I said, he drove everything, big corn pickers, and now y'all don't know about corn pickers and stuff, but anyhow, and tobacco harvesters. But anyhow, he had a piece of stick in his lung about the size of your finger. They just sucked it in because it didn't have all the mass and stuff.
Wow.
And so it infected, and they had to take part of his lung out.
Oh.
Wow.
So, he was incapacitated for a long time. He lived to be 66 years old and died of an aneurysm later on. But during that time,
He worked hard.
yes,
Yeah.
everybody and he also helped build a Marine base, because his family, my black grandma's family, all of those people lived in that area. And that's another time. And I know I'm jumping around, and you always have to forgive me.
You're fine. No, you're
This
fine.
is great.
Look, when you're 80, you have to talk when it comes out. I can use that now. But when they moved them off into the surrounding counties, when they started building, women didn't have those jobs then, but all of the men who wanted to go back and go to work, pretty much they hired them to go back and help build a Marine base. So they
That's
had,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
later on, way later on, and that's where, some of the progress. Because I know several people who actually cashed in later on, and when they realized they were state employees, a federal employee.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Uh-huh. Yeah. They didn't get rich, but they got compensated.
Yeah.
Right.
And when they moved them out from off there, they didn't do that eminent domain thing and just pack them up and take them off. They paid, and way back then, to give the head of a household $200. That was like being rich.
That was
Right.
that's a lot of money
Yeah.
back then.
Uh-huh. And so I have always been put in a position, and it's like I said, I was taught by my family, and I know that everybody
awesome,
didn't
though.
come up that
Yeah.
way. But there was some good on both sides.
Yeah.
And then some of the white ones that helped look after the black ones got treated just as bad.
I bet.
That's
They
right.
were called
Yeah.
nigger lovers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my grandma, who, if she wanted, the other grandma, could pass any day that she wanted to. She looked like you, by the way. And she's a little bit lighter than you, but she had her red Irish hair. But anyhow.
Oh, hence your red hair. Okay.
That's where it came.
Okay. I put two and two together now. I'm like, where would she get red hair? Because your grandma was Irish.
My grandma
Yeah.
was Irish.
That's
and
right.
My family
Irish,
looks
okay.
like the League of Nations. All of that in there, because I have some cousins that are darker than me, and I've got one or two with blue eyes. I have a sister that's darker than me, and people used to ask her, did my parents make differences in us? And I won't tell you what she told them because she had a foul mouth. But anyhow.
Oh, I was gonna say.
No, we didn't
You
do
can
that
say-
because
Say it.
because we used to get things thrown at us and people spit off the school bus at us and everything. And so we would go home and we start talking about how we hated white people. And my mama, because we've always known about our heritage. It was way before Ancestry DNA.
Yeah.
Whatever.com.
Yeah.
But we've always known about Grandma and her father. And we've always known about who we call Big Mama. Because Big Mama we still can't find out who her mama started out. They found her under a tree. And I'm serious, she was an undernourished baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they still haven't found out where she came from. But with all that mixture in there and everything, but Maynard Bernie Jones was a white woman. But she was in love with a tall, long, brown drink of water. They had 21
Oh wow.
kids.
What?
16 lived. 21. She had 2 sets of twins.
21
But
They
children.
really loved each other.
Yeah. And her father,
Wow.
her father provided her that prime land on Trent River in Jones County. It was hers.
Wow.
He gave it to her, and she didn't have to sell it to anybody unless nobody could take it from her. She turned around and they sold it back to the people that it came
Right,
from
that's
originally.
awesome.
But I'm not going to get into that because that will stir up too many things, and I can't write my life stories. Everybody I know is dead. So all of that was going on, but I guess my story is a little different, but I'm not ashamed to tell my story.
No, I think your
Yeah.
story is awesome because it brings both
Yeah, and
perspectives.
And
Yeah.
I always have to look at things because I get picked on a lot, even where I volunteer now. Because you like white people better than you like us. I said, I don't really like nobody.
How about that part? That part.
And that's how I said, oh, you know me, I don't like nobody. And so, but I was taught to be your best person and always
Yes.
treat people the way you want to treat
Yes.
That's right.
treated. And I cannot not help you. I wish sometimes that I could just walk on by and tend to my business. I can't.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but it's fine. I told you not to turn me on, okay?
Oh no, it's fine. I do want to ask you so this question, and then we can move on to the other ones.
Okay.
But my son wanted me to ask you this question because I told him that I was going to interview you. So I added this question at the end. I'll make it it's 2 questions, but I'll make it a 1 question. Do you feel that this project is fragile? What we're doing with progress, and how we backslid, how we gone back any?
To answer his question, yes and yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's like everything else. It's sort of like we've come full circle. And I think I'm going to go to, since I've seen the questions, to another part in there. We have gone to the point now that we take it for granted that it's about celebrating and staying home and not going to school that day. We should never forget where we came from.
Never.
That's true.
And to be vigilant. And now, and I'm old enough to say this because I don't have a whole lot to lose at this point.
Do it.
All the laws that were passed to benefit blacks and brown and other people
and women
women.
Yeah.
We're back in the 1920s. And
Yeah,
if we
it's true.
sit there and just do nothing, I'm really glad I'm an old woman. I don't have to fight about abortion rights. I don't have to fight about any of those other things. I don't have kids to come up in what's going on, but I can understand all the women that I've held their hands and patted their shoulders this year and in the last few months because they were crying about the laws that might get repealed. And the fact that their kids can't have kids and they have baked their eggs and now they don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And the fact that we're all turning into the people we used to fight, into the people we used to try to protect, we're turning into that.
Yeah.
And so, to answer his question, it's very fragile. And the other part is, instead of us, you can have as many riots as you want to. You can have as much marching as you want to. But you better have a plan and a means to stay sane and continue to work and never forget what you went through, what your parents went through, and listen to them.
Yes.
And because I get tired of being called that, old coot. I don't mind that, but that was back in the day. But I'm still here.
That's right.
Yes.
And I have worked my life. I have made progress. I've done pretty much what I wanted to do.
That's
and it had nothing
fantastic.
to do with being a light-skinned black woman. It had to do with the fact that I was a working, committed black woman. And to always, if there was a glass ceiling, find a way to break it without hurting.
Amen to that.
That's a good one. That's good.
And all the young people, think about where you're going and the fact that if you don't know where you came from, you go right back to it. And you'll go back to worse because you're not used to what we went
Absolutely.
through. And so that's
so
good.
true.
That's kind of it. And always stay vigilant. And stop using your loud mouth and your fist and the Uzis and the AK-47s and use your brain. Have a plan and work that plan. And I'm gonna do like those and get out and vote.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
the thing is that is what I would say certain people are expecting us to do. Expecting. I'm gonna say us to do. First of all, is be complacent. That's number one. Number two is to protest in the street and to fight and to be violent and the loot and whatever,
divisive.
so they can say,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, see." So we got to be smart about it. You have to use your brain.
Yeah.
You have to use your brain
I think-
because that's the way that we can combat. Like I said, the backsliding.
I agree. I think it was the lack of young people's education is the reason why they are able to accept an individual that doesn't know anything. Because if you're educated on your history and what your mother went through and your grandmothers went through, you couldn't ever want to put somebody in a
category or
you don't want to put anyone in authority that could possibly, like Miss Maynard said, circumvent what's already,
or take things back.
right.
And
I mean, if you're educated
Reverse, I
on
guess,
where
would be
you
a good-
came from
Yeah.
and what your people have been through,
Yes.
you would never put somebody in that position
Yeah.
to take that back. All the suffering, all the tears, all the pain.
And with the stroke of a pen, take out 3 or 4 generations worth
That's-
of progress.
Yes.
That's all. That's
Yes.
ignorance, and people perish because of their lack of knowledge.
Yes.
And the ones who didn't vote at all.
That's what I'm talking
yes,
about. Those are the
Well, let me
ones.
get my church thing going here.
I know one personally.
Me too.
Young gentleman, black gentleman who said he wasn't voting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Because nobody does anything for anybody.
And then I heard one, and then there was one on the news being loud and rude. But I heard one standing near me say that he didn't think no woman, black or white, was smart enough to be president.
Yep.
And I promise you, when I got ready to leave, I stepped on his foot. And
But that just shows
That
the
is-
ignorance.
That's what I'm saying. That's ignorance.
And when I say ignorance, I'm talking about the lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. You are not versed in, or educated, or both, all right, in what has happened, what is going on. All right. Because if you were, first of all, you would be open-minded to understanding both sides. Because you have to.
And
You have to listen to the both sides. You know, you have to listen to the good and the bad. You know,
Yeah.
and so you can have an informed, opinion. And if you still feel a certain type of way, then what you gonna do?
It's
Yeah.
terrible that either if as women or as brown and black skinned women, whether you're a white woman or a black or brown skinned woman, that someone would put limitations on you based on your sex, and then beyond that, it can get based on your ethnicity or color or whatever.
And that disappoints me from men, black men especially, who maybe were raised by a single mother, where that mother took care of them.
Yes.
So you can say that your mother's not fit to be an authority.
Right.
And some of them can probably say that because maybe they did grow up in foster care or
Sure.
you know.
Maybe.
But a lot of times that's I know that's a smaller segment of the population. Because most people have had one or two, or both parents in the household or whoever raised them. So yeah.
But those were the same people. A majority of those people who put Obama in office, those young, minorities, young people,
just
young people
people.
in general.
Because they were ready for a change. And it's just so sad that, we're going through something right now as a country.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Where
going through
everything's
something right
being
now.
rolled
Everything is
back.
Yeah. And
Reversed.
and it's not going to be until sometimes, what's the saying? It's not a saying. It has to get bad before it gets,
Absolutely.
gets better.
So
And
that's
that
what I'm
is
saying.
unfortunate because, see, that's still going backwards.
It's going backwards.
If you think
because
about it.
they're so, but see, and Ms. Maynard, you said it. They're so, the education part is so key. And most people are so far removed from that, your history, that you don't care either way. So,
And women have a double whammy. Not black women. Because we had that same art class that you brought your mother to. We have every now and then they'll ask let's ask me one of them questions. And because, as I told the women in there, because most of the women in my class are white women. And they didn't have to have the upbringing I had.
right.
They were told
That's-
from birth that they were superior. And like I told everybody, the only difference in me and you is that you stayed, I said back in the day, you were in the big house with a big skirt and an umbrella, and you thought we were dancing and carrying on because we were happy. We were not. I said, but if anybody came along and the taxes needed paid, your daddy would sell you to them. I said he would do it through marriage. But
That's right.
they would
Yeah.
marry you off to anybody down the road with enough money.
That's right.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
said, and all you had to do was have one baby, preferably a boy. You could go to Europe and spend the rest of your life, and they wouldn't care. I said, and don't tell me if you were in that position, you would not care if Daddy had a black woman that he really cared about. Because see, that's another thing too. I got
That's
one
another
situation
thing.
in my family too. This man sent his son and her mama away to live with the Indians, so thinking that she would be safe. But then he was not an Indian. He was brown, but he was from India.
Oh, wow.
American.
Okay.
Fierce warrior, but he could not marry rank in the family. He could never be chief unless he killed everybody else in the family.
Wow.
So he came back to be his father's attendant, so to speak, and to be bodyguard for his little sister, who was Caucasian.
Wow.
See, I know my history.
There's
Generations and everything.
there's a
It's a lot.
lot.
It's
There's
a lot of that. There's
lot
plenty of
going
that.
on.
A lot of
There's a
that.
lot going on, and that's why it's imperative that if we do have the older people in our families, that we do connect with them and hear their stories. I remember this was a few years ago talking to my mother because I'm still trying to do my genealogy for my family, and she told me about her great grandmother and grandfather, and I said, why didn't I hear about these people before? And I said, who are they? Never heard the names in my life.
Wow.
And so then she started talking to me, but it helped, because then I was able to go and then do a little bit more research. But anyway,
Yeah,
oh my
I
goodness,
know
this
a
is some
lot
good
about
information.
my great grandparents. I know a lot about them.
That is so good, and I'm going. Of course, I'm gonna learn more because I'm gonna pick it back up because I started doing that, back in the early 2000s. I shared that before in one of our earlier podcasts. But yeah, it is amazing that if we just take the time to talk to the older people, because a lot of people, like I didn't grow up with my grandparents. My grandparents, I didn't. But you have so many people that did, but they're not talking to them or they're not asking any questions.
Yeah,
I wish I would have asked more questions to my grandpa.
My grandparents are older than you, so they're older than you. But one grandmother was a housekeeper. She took care of children. She washed, she cleaned, she babysat, she cooked until she started her own business.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
A couple more questions, I think, before we wrap it up. But one is, what does Black History Month mean to you? What's the importance of Black History Month? And we understand, as Ronisha said, that is for education, awareness, just to kind of teach future generations what our past generations went through today. So what does Black History Month entail or mean to you?
To me, it means that we as a people need to always teach that history. We need to, that the young person that you may have to sit on them to tell it to them.
Yes.
But start like my folk did. As I told you, I've known since, my grandparents were born in 1893, both my grandmothers. But then I also know when my great-grandmother, the one with the Irish boyfriend,
See?
he was my grandma Mayna's dad. Okay. And see, our family, Millie was Big Mom. Millie was 6'2" and weighed 200 and some pounds.
Ooh.
She was a property owner. So whenever she had Grandma was torn between the two because Big Mama could be Indian or anybody and wore the pompadours and the Victorian blouses and everything, and she played the organ, and she was, as I said, a woman of means. But she had my grandma Mayna with the white man from Ireland. But 19 years later, after they married her, and I won't disrespect my other half of my heritage because their grandfather was an old widow black man, but he had children. So you know how we gonna marry her off to them to get that baby a name. The baby was already here and working, cause that baby had an opportunity as a white woman, and she did, to go off and take the teaching exam. So my white grandma was a school teacher, but she never got a chance to teach, but she always substituted, and she was the family, the community's midwife and everything else. But the story that I'm trying to get to here is that even with things going the way that they were, Big Mama, the thing was that the little man that was my grandmama's father raped her. Big Mama was 6'2", 250 pounds. Now we know how strong we can be, and none of us are that size. Okay. Grandpa, or great grandpa, was about 5'10" and weighed about 160 pounds soaking wet. Now you know, ain't nobody raped nobody. I had to tell this to my uncles they were all and they were just like him, except they were taller. But they were all into what happened back then, what happened back then. I said, first of all, you have to be a woman to understand this. He'd have to bring a partner or a gun or threaten somebody that you were protecting, or he didn't get. And so I said, so they had a long relationship. I said, this man came back to see her and tried to steal her away. And I said, and my mama tells a story about how her handlebar mustache granddaddy used to bounce her on his knee and tell his daughter to please don't forget to tell his children that I'm their grandpappy. I mean, I was cursed, breast, or whatever you want to do with it. I've known my ancestry forever. And the other side, they came from my grandma had my black grandma. Her grandparents came from England as indentured servants. And there are people who still can't tell the difference between an indentured servant and a slave.
Yeah.
But when they got to America, they were the only thing of property. They sold them, but they bought them back. But that's all they had. So there's just all these stories here, but everybody has always, I've always been nosy. And since I started talking before I walked, they always told me stuff, and I could retain it. And I became the family historian. And then all of a sudden I realized the way our family's set up, on my mama's side, I am not the oldest granddaughter, but I am the oldest daughter of the granddaughter. My mama was in that line. It was Millie, Maynard, Millie, Maynard. And I said that line was going to stop with me because I ain't naming my baby that. But anyway.
That's funny.
I am by choice and by everybody telling me everything, and my grandma and my mama and everybody, because I'll listen and ask questions, just like when I was 5. I've always done that so I can tell the family stories. And I'm about 90% sure when it comes up on the family tree and Ancestry.com, it's real. And then some of the stuff that the ones that are afraid to swap their mouth, I can tell them what those people are too. That's because I said I can't write my book until they're dead. Okay? But and I'm tired. I'm not tired, but I'm not trying to play this down here. But we still have to be together.
Yes.
And we have to stop the separatism and all this and this white supremacy and black power and all this and all that. We're one people.
The division. We're all humans.
Yeah.
And if we're not, we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm so afraid that we're closer than we think.
How can we preserve what we've already accomplished, and what will you tell our future generations?
First of all, in order to preserve it, we have to put Black history back into the public schools. I don't mean George Washington Carver and Mary McLeod Bethune and Frederick Douglass.
Right.
You have to put, and who invented the telephone and all that stuff, put the actual facts that we were not considered as people. We were property.
Yes.
We were patted down and patted your flanks and patted your stomach to see if you could carry a future. Well, cattle and horses.
Yeah.
We have to go in there and find that dignity, pull it out and use it, and not to fight or to shoot somebody or to kill somebody, because then you go to jail. We need to pull that strength out, and use it, and never forget what we've got, and just put it back in there and do something on Black History Month, other than be happy because on Martin Luther King Day I can stay home all day. I ain't got to go to work. I ain't got to go to school.
That's right.
Because we have a rich, and I think you used this word, we have a rich history, and it's not all gloom and doom.
That's right.
But there's some things that went on, all right, that our younger and future generations need to know, because when you know better, when you know what happened, you can do better.
Yes,
Absolutely.
That's why education, like you said, education is key.
It is. It is.
And that's what we need to do. We need to put it back
Education, acceptance,
yes,
and
empathy.
Empathy. You
That's a
don't know
big
how
one.
someone feels unless you put themselves in their shoes, and you still don't know. You may have a better clue, but it's just and take stands for other people. I read an article yesterday where it says people are, oh, how can I make a change? What can I do, as a white person or something?
Be an advocate.
When you see something going wrong, you stand up and you be an advocate. You be a
Call it
defender.
out.
You
Yes.
be a protector. And that's how we do it.
Yeah.
And little by little, we'll be able to get where we need to be, and we're not yet.
We have more in common.
Yes.
Okay.
We do.
Then we don't. And we don't
We're
understand
people.
that, because if you think about it, you can be your childhood, being a parent, being a spouse, all the things that you go through as a child, as a parent, as a spouse, as a grandma, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And
Those are
if you
common
ever think about
things.
it, if you ever been in a situation where you didn't know anybody and you're in a group setting or whatever, and all of a sudden the subject comes up, and then everybody has something has something to say about that particular subject.
Well, I'm usually the person to bring it up.
Like explainer.
That's what I
yeah.
said. I'm usually that person. But you have to do that.
You have to,
And-
communication, yeah.
And you have to be as brave about that as you do about anything else. Because now I'm afraid of spiders, padded bras, and apathy. Apathy scares
I'm afraid of
the
padded
crap.
bras too.
That texture and that doll, that Cabbage Patch doll. I'm getting off the subject here, but the texture of that, it is just so human. It's scary. And see, I'm a
gotcha.
person, I can't stand stuff like that. I'm extremely sensitive, okay? About just about everything. That's how come I can pick up on attitudes and things of that nature. But we need to just remember that, because I tell it about a different way, but the creation, God wrote a ball and threw it out there. It didn't say that this person was going to be better than that person. It didn't say that this was going to do that. He just threw it out there. Because I have a piece of my art that hangs down in a Smart Artist Gallery downtown that has this woman of color. And she's not a black woman. She's green, orange, purple, and every color in the world.
like that.
Because, as I was explaining to a very conservative white group that allowed me to be their Black History speaker 2 years ago, she looked at it, she got her mouth open, she couldn't close it. She said, "It's beautiful." That's all it is, but that's all she could say. So she said, "Can you tell me about it?" "Oh yeah." I said, "You think about it. When you were created, the world was created." I said, "The Lord didn't make a whole lot of balls and throw different ones. He put it out there. You were related to everything in the universe." I said, "But we have stripped everything down and cheated everything because all we're concerned with is the color of skin. That's all that we really see."
Yeah.
I said, "But if your DNA grew on the outside of your body, that's what you would look like." 3 minutes later, another group of women came in. This woman turned around and taught them that same lesson. So you have to put it out there.
Exactly.
You have to
Yeah,
teach
share.
it,
You gotta
yeah.
share.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I said, I'm not afraid of much. Now, the social anxiety thing, that was just I would just get and faint. But
I'm glad you didn't faint
I
here.
have a friend like that.
now.
I have a friend like that who's like
I
that.
have, but see, back then I did. I suffered so bad from social. I'm serious. I got up at my school thing. We did a thing on the Today Show, and I was Stave Scaraway, not Dave Garraway, Stave Scaraway. I looked out there in borrowed clothing, and I could always do my hair, and it was long and about a little bit lighter than yours. And I was up there going on, and I looked out there, and there was about 400 people in the auditorium, the gymatorium at Whittington School, and there was all those people. And all of a sudden, from somewhere, that little girl that was molested as a 7-year-old came forward, and she scared everything. And boom, I was gone. Everything started turning, and I just fell out.
Wow.
I've been doing it for years, ever since I was a little girl, because I've never been just a student. I was always, they told me I could walk in and out of places and nobody would see me. I didn't quite like the idea of being invisible, but I could walk without making a sound. My mother said, "Why don't you make a sound when you walk?" I said, "Because you told me not to." And so, the same child had to live in the chimney. But anyway, that's how I have been all of my life.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
That was funny.
Well, Miss Maynard,
Yes, thank
we
you.
love you.
Yes.
We love
Oh my
you.
gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Any
It's been
last
awesome.
minute, any final thoughts, anything that you want to share before we wrap it up?
Yes. The final thought that I want to share is
And I do want
that
to read this because I thought it was fantastic. at the
if
end.
we continue the way that we're going, we're going to be back in the 40s or the 50s or even further because we're used to equality now. It's not going to be easy to go back to that. And it's not going to be easy to live together unless if you make it a plan and try to do that. And everybody's going to have to take part.
Yeah.
You're going to have to care about something. We had over at the center, our ceramics teacher had us to do a personal totem of ourselves.
I remember you mentioned that.
Yes, and what you were afraid of, and the thing that I am afraid of, and I still is apathy. The only thing anybody wants to care about right now is right now, me and mine. There's no concern whatsoever about suffering or anything else for anybody. And if we don't do something about that, it has nothing to do with your color or whatever. Care about people.
That's right.
And the fact that, according to what we were
Yes.
taught, you have a soul.
Yes.
And I do believe that the way we're going now, we can do damage to our soul. We don't have to be out there. My grandma talks about categorizing sin, so I'm not going to go all out there again. But anyhow, some things are sin. But to care about another person, you don't have to love them. You don't have to want to sleep with them. But care that they're human beings.
That's right.
And
Respect
that they
them
have
as
the
people.
right
Yes.
to be here just like you and to be respected just like
Absolutely.
right.
That's
And
the key.
absolute
do
That's the key.
something about it.
Yeah, that's the key.
That's perfect.
That's good.
That's perfect.
Okay.
And there's this, when we were doing our Black History research, I really like this final sentence to close it out. It says, while Black history should be recognized year round, Black History Month provides a dedicated space to uplift voices, share stories, and inspire
Yeah.
action toward a more exclusive and just society. And that's what Miss Maynard is saying. Just it's not about skin color. It is for Black History Month, but in general, as humans, it should be just about people, regardless of your race, creed, religion, sexual orientation, whatever. Like, we just need to love people
Yeah.
and have empathy.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
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 I agree. And I think Black history is just about remembering. Let's remember where we came from.
And let's do our part. Look, let's do our part in the educating and the
educate
sharing
people.
of
Yep.
information
Yep.
and the sharing of knowledge. You know, and I know that sometimes that can be a little bit hard to do in today's society because of social media and working from home. You know, we have that isolation, and that's why like we have to on purpose. Okay, be out there. And I'll give you an example. Today I went to a volunteer expo because I am determined. Okay, as a retired person, I am determined. And I'm not really isolated because I'll be outside, y'all. Be outside. But not just to be outside, but to make a difference. To make a difference. Because I feel like I do have some gifts. I believe that I do have some skills. And I just want to share that. No matter what it is. Even if I have to go and do some filing for somebody. That's okay.
That's right.
It's helping.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're sharing. We have Miss Maynard here. We're sharing about her story. We don't want that story lost.
No.
You know, we want
absolutely.
people to remember the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and
What if you've heard it?
we want them to hear it again.
But I live what I talk about. And as far as being home, I came in your house today, and your house is so clean and neat until I don't want to go back into mine.
Oh.
But I go out and do something every day. 'Cause people tell me something because I complain about my house. Well, why don't you stay home? I can't. There are things out there that need to happen. Cats and dogs love me. Other people's cats and dogs, okay? And it's because they know that I really care. I can't help myself. Sometimes I'm a nuisance. But
Oh,
I'm
no.
telling you, whether you want me to or not, and if you say, leave me alone, I got it. I'll stand back, but don't breathe funny. You all right? I can't help myself.
That's good.
But then I think that a lot more people should be that way.
I think we need more
Everybody
people
should
like
be
you.
that way.
I think we need more people like you
Yeah.
in this world. I think
Absolutely.
it would be a better place.
Yeah, she's open and
Yeah.
she's out there. She's not into the isolation. And I hear what you're saying about a clean house, but people are more important.
People
So
are
what you're
important.
doing,
And I appreciate your parents, the way that they raised
Yeah.
you, and that's, I think, a lot of the issues we have now is because of what children are taught
That's right.
Or not.
or not taught. Yeah,
Mainly.
inclusivity and things like that. It's not taught. It's actually exclusivity. If we're different, if we look different, if our hair is different or whatever, just or the way we speak or the way we walk or all that stuff gets in the way instead of just, hey, how about me as a person? But anyway, we're really happy to have had
Yeah.
you today.
Thank
here.
you so
This
much,
was very
Miss
insightful.
Maynard.
Thank you.
it was an honor.
It was. It
Thank you,
was.
Miss
Oh,
Maynard.
thank you. So old people do rock, huh?
They rock.
Yeah, they rock. Miss Maynard rocks. Thanks for coming today.
Oh, people do
We
rock.
appreciate you,
Yes,
Will.
they do.
Okay, well,
I hope you enjoyed our episode today with Miss Maynard and celebrating Black History Month. Any other final thoughts, ladies?
Nope.
what's going to be our hashtag? for
Our
this,
hashtag is going to be 3VU Black History.
BHM.
BHM. It's all letters then.
Yeah.
Hashtag 3VU BHM. All right.
All right.
Take care, y'all.
All right, bye,
Bye.
Do my queen wave.
Do your queen wave.